So I figured we'd just get started real quick, right into some of the meat of a social media conversation. What would you say is the secret to appealing to OnlyFans recommendation system?
So Jeff, we don't have a personalized recommendation system on OnlyFans.
Okay. What's your roadmap for incorporating generative AI into the platform?
So we don't allow AI-generated content creators. Creators can use AI to enhance their own content, but no wholly AI accounts.
What's your plan to increase time spent, that paramount growth metric for every social media company?
So unlike many other social media companies, that's actually not an important growth metric for us.
What's your biggest source of inbound traffic?
I don't know, we don't track it.
So how did you get this job? You must have a really formidable background in growth hacking, right?
Actually, unusually for a tech company CEO, I have a background in law, and I specialized in cybersecurity, privacy, and trust and safety, which may explain the answers to some of those questions.
And you're sure you run a social media company?
Absolutely.
Okay. So everyone meet Keily. OnlyFans has well over 300 million users at this point, well over 3 million creators, and only about half of which are in the adult space, correct?
Well, again, Jeff, we don't track that either.
But you guys have suggested you think you're around there. Most of the revenue, though, right?
So I think the really interesting thing about OnlyFans is that we are a space for grown-ups to have grown-up content experiences. Sometimes that will include adult content, but often it can include sport, comedy, mixed martial arts, basically anywhere where a creator wants to monetize a fan base, as long as they keep with our terms of service.
Okay, and so I think this is probably where we should start, because I am feigning my surprise at those opening questions. It actually is kind of hard to grasp after 5 years of covering Instagram and Facebook that this is not just a business, but a very good business. You guys, $1 billion in revenue, that was a couple years back, and by all accounts still growing, and a gross margin in the 50% more or less range.
That's right, yes.
And there's just some of the stuff just seems so counterintuitive. I mean, why would, say, OnlyFans not have on-platform recommendations to help people discover accounts that are popular with people that behave like them? Like, this is the bread and butter of every social media platform of the sort of advertising-driven model.
And I think that's the key, right? It's the advertising-driven model. That means that social media platforms are often structured in that way. So unlike a lot of those other platforms, we have an alignment of interests with our creator community. We only succeed where our creators succeed. So one of the stats that you didn't mention, which I'm incredibly proud of, is that we've paid out over $15 billion to creators since we were founded. And our business model means that for every dollar we earn, creators earn $4.
And so if you might not be looking to mimic the mainstream advertising-based social media platform business models, I probably can't say the reverse. In the last couple of years, we've seen TikTok, Google Shorts, certainly Instagram and Facebook really go in heavy on subscription and direct creator payments. Not coincidentally, at the same time, they are cutting their creator sort of payout budgets. Yep. I would be very curious about your read as to, first of all, what that competition looks like, and second of all, what a platform that is making the jump into your model's approach would need to think about in terms of trust and safety.
Yeah, so there's two parts to that question. So I guess the first part is the other platforms essentially copying the OnlyFans model, right, in terms of allowing subscriptions and some degree of creator monetization, although typically not as generous a revenue split. I think creators are demanding more. User-generated content, if you look at how Gen Z and younger adults are dealing and engaging with media content, they're they want to engage with creators. They want creators to be fairly paid, to be fairly remunerated for the content that they create. And they should own that content as well. So again, one of the key differentiators for us is when a creator puts content on our platform, they remain the copyright owner, right? It's theirs. They can take it off the platform at any point. It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the content creator. In terms of the other platforms, I can absolutely see why. It's obviously an additional revenue stream if you've got ad revenue alongside that. But the difficulty, I think, in then transitioning users is OnlyFans has always had that model. There was always an expectation that you were going to pay to access content. We didn't switch it up. There was no great switcheroo that happened for the users or the creators. It was always the business plan. And I think the difficulty that other platforms have is that when people have been receiving content for free for so long, it can be hard for users to then transition, and they need to feel that it's exclusive content. They need to feel like they're getting more. So I think that's the challenge for other platforms when they start thinking about adopting a subscription model. The other really interesting thing that we've noticed in terms of trends in the creator economy and in the business in general is that actually revenue from subscriptions now makes up a smaller proportion of our revenue than revenue from microtransactions. So microtransactions are pay to unlock content, individual messaging, custom messages, exclusive behind-the-scenes footage that you can access and open when you subscribe to a creator. So it's really interesting to see that degree of user choice coming into it again, right? As a user and a consumer, sometimes I get a bit tired of having like 10 subscriptions to all the things when really I just want to watch one thing. And so giving users and creators the freedom to monetize their content using different models, subscriptions and microtransactions alongside each other, is very important. Second part of your question was about trust and safety. That is fundamental to how we operate at OnlyFans. We don't have a license to operate unless it's something that we take incredibly seriously. And we start by looking at the creator onboarding journey. That, for me, is the most important thing to get right. And the reason why is because creators are the only people on the platform who can share and monetize content. Fans are subscribers. They subscribe to the content, they can't share and monetize it. But for creators, they have to go through an incredibly stringent onboarding process. They have to provide us with 9 different pieces of information about themselves, and in lots of jurisdictions, 10, including in the US, where you've got to give your social security number. We're talking government-issued ID, full name, bank account details, your other social media handles, so we can check that you're Jeff on all the other platforms as well as Jeff on OnlyFans. And we then don't monetize that data. We use that data simply to keep our community safe, but also to create accountability.
And this is an issue that's come up for a lot of other platforms. In countries where there aren't, let's say, reliable records, how do you deal with that?
That's tricky, and in countries where actually we're not able to verify somebody's identity, we choose not to operate in those areas. We have to have certainty that we know the age and identity of our creators before they join the platform, particularly if they are going to have the ability to share adult content if they choose to do so.
Yeah, this was, I mean, the way I ended up pitching this panel to the Journal was I was looking at Meta's subscription products. You could pay for subscriptions to people's children, child models. And the recommendation issues there were unfortunately recommending those accounts to people who had a very high score on an internal metric that was said to describe suspicious behavior toward children, right? And obviously, you guys do not allow minors on the platform as either creators or not. If there is a photo in, let's say I'm a creator and I have a photo of my kid that I want to show my fans, how's that going to go for me?
It's not going to go well.
Okay, and let's say just as a matter of fantasy, I want to appear in my OnlyFans accounts in a schoolgirl outfit. How's that going to go for me?
So we don't allow age-related role play either, Jeff, and that's fundamental to me. I've got 2 children; they're 9 and 11. I want them to have age-appropriate experiences online. It's incredibly important that we do that as social media platforms, that we recognize we have to cater to our user group and we have to have safety controls in place that cater to that and recognize the risks that are inherent in each of the different platform models. That's why for us, because we know that everyone's over 18 on our platform and we're confident on that, but we do allow adult content, we have different risks that we have to cater for. So we have to invest very heavily in content moderation. It's the reason why we don't have end-to-end encryption on our platform, even in the direct messages. And it means that we're able to really focus on keeping the community safe and keeping the community as for adults only.
I did want to ask you, to change subjects about OnlyFans TV, which for anyone looking for free content, free NSFW content, it's going to be a disappointment. But like, this is something that OnlyFans has been investing in. There are no ads, and as best I can tell, there are no plans to monetize.
Correct.
Why do you? Why is this a thing that you bother doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, when we first started looking at OFTV, that was a question everybody asked. They were like, oh, well, this is it. They're gonna do ads. It's gonna start happening, or they're gonna start monetizing this content in a different way. And actually, for us, again, it's about aligned incentives with our creators, right? That's our North Star. And so OFTV, because we don't have site-wide discoverability, you can't search on OnlyFans for a topic. So what OFTV does, it allows our creators to connect with new audiences, entirely safe for work, on a variety of different channels. We had 44 million views on OFTV last month. And we actually licensed some OFTV content to Netflix in the UK, one of our original series that we co-created with one of our creators. And so for us, it's that thing about how do we provide better opportunities for creators, not how do we squeeze another dollar out of a user.
I did want to, in terms of these sort of counterintuitive business choices, this is one I actually am thoroughly confused on. Chatbots, obviously, with generative AI, it may not be that great at many things right now, but it's reasonably good at carrying on a low-end conversation. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine that it would be very easy to, you know, obviously a big part of the business, in addition to subscriptions, is sort of add-ons. Some of those include talking to creators. I don't think it's a great secret that people have that very popular creators have customer support staff. Mm-hmm. Really does seem like you could just, you know, train a bot to impersonate a particular creator and just let it go, and that would be a lot of money saved. Why are you guys not allowing that?
So again, you said low-end conversations. There's some very intellectual discussions happening on OnlyFans, and the chatbot may not be able to deal with that. Just, you know, but putting that part aside, I think when we look at what Gen AI is doing right now, there are a lot of risks associated with that. Here comes the lawyer bit again, right? A lot of the sessions I've sat in this conference have talked about what the future looks like for Gen AI, and so there's sort of like torment nexus, doomsday scenarios. How do we prevent that from happening? But they're not dealing with some of the issues that exist right now with AI, like copyright, attribution, artistic integrity. All of those other things. I mean, there was some people got in a little bit of trouble this week about, you know, voice likeness, for example, being used. And until those issues are solved, and they're right now issues, they're not doomsday scenario issues, they're right now content scraping, bad for creators issues. There's a real risk in terms of actually just allowing that to run free in the system. And so for us, when we think about how we allow creators to use Gen AI on the platform, we do allow creators to use it to enhance their content, but it needs to clearly be them. It needs to clearly belong to them. They need to be able to show us that, and we need to have confidence in that. That's not the case with Gen AI content. We simply don't have the confidence in its authenticity and its provenance. I mean,
so, you know, Meta has unleashed bots that occasionally pretend to be parents of children in the New York public schools when things go weird. Are you saying that you will never allow generative AI for content and for communications and kind of the synthetic social network thing, or just that right now the risk to reward is off?
Right now the risk to reward is off as far as we can see it, but we continue to look at it. I don't have a crystal ball. It'd be great if I did. I mean, that'd be wonderful, but I don't. And the pace of change is rapid. And so I think for us, we have a working group of lawyers, privacy experts, technologists, developers who are looking at what is available out there and how it can help our creator community. And if there comes a time when it is the right thing to do and we are confident about the safeguards, it's something we'll explore. But right now, as things currently stand, it's not right for us.
So I think you've been pretty public about a distaste for some of the recommendation-driven platforms. At the same time that you are sort of holding this model out separately, though, it does seem like successful OnlyFans creators are almost uniformly also successful creators on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. And I guess I am wondering how you see that symbiosis, and also if your business is to some degree dependent on a model that you don't seem particularly enchanted by to work.
I think for us, it's each creator is their own business. Essentially, we're a platform that facilitates those creator connections with their fans. There was a really interesting report by Kajabi, which basically said that most creators operate on, I think, 7+ platforms, and they provide different content to different audiences on those platforms. It would be very interesting to see what would happen if the other social media platforms completely changed how creators interact with fans and followers on those platforms. And if that had a negative impact on the creators, in fact, it might benefit us. More people may end up coming to OnlyFans on that basis, assuming, of course, they're over 18 and get through all the checks. But I think for us, it's hard to say, but there is a degree of symbiosis because it's all about the creator and about them and their fan base. But we still have to have the safeguards in place and control what we can control on our platform. And for us, allowing users to have choice, and allowing users to choose every single subscription and pick each creator they subscribe to is very important, because as a fan, I'm not a fan of everything. I'm a fan of some things. I'm a fan of some people. I like some musicians. I like some journalists. It's not all journalists everywhere, I like you, you're fine. But that's true. That's true of all of our human experiences. And sometimes we don't just want to be pushed at. We don't want the push notifications. We want to have choice. We want to have control and agency. And our creators want control and agency too. Creators can block fans. They can decide not to allow someone to follow them. And so really for me, it's that alignment of incentives and focusing on what makes a great user experience and a great creator experience is really important to us.
And does that, so it seems like you're suggesting that the platform can be a bit of an oasis to the experience elsewhere.
Yep.
But it seems like, is it even worth thinking about how the internet itself could be more along these lines, or should we at this point, and is OnlyFans building its business on the assumption that it will forever be sort of an offshoot, right? Where you'll do discovery, people will go out into the the wastelands and come back with their fan base, and that's that. Or is there a possibility that you could see emerging otherwise?
I'm an optimist. I really would like to think that we can build better social media platforms and we can make changes. I think some of the structural issues we talked about earlier on do make that hard. And there's a lot of lessons that can be learned about retrofitting safety, right? And that's one of the problems, right? If you build a network in a particular way and then it goes wrong in some of the ways that you've discovered, it's then very hard to think, how do I put that genie back in the bottle? How do I do it in a different way, but still be successful? And for us, because we've been successful while building and while having safety by design and while thinking about and being cognizant about the risks that are prevalent on our platform and controlling for them appropriately, it's different because it's safety by design rather than safety by afterthought. So, I'm hopeful. An afterthought and an effort is still better than nothing. And so I'm hopeful that we can get there. And I'm hopeful that we will see more change and a more optimistic future for social media.
So I write for the Journal, and I am pretty sure I would be in trouble if I didn't ask what happened to the IPO plans from a few years back. It seemed like OnlyFans had a great cash flow,
Yep.
was looking at a SPAC, had ability to cash out, I'm sure at a great multiple. What the hell happened?
We were talking about this backstage and we said, well, look what happened to the companies that did SPAC, right? And so that was a bullet dodge.
I don't think that was the SPAC's problem. That was more the companies that did the SPAC's problem.
But I think for us, it's not in our current plans, right? There needs to be a real incentive as to why you want to go public and what that means. It also may impact, could impact on some of the values that we have. We're able to have the values that we have because we're a privately held company. We're able to say, that's okay. We don't have to chase every single red cent that exists. We can make choices that we feel are better for our community, that will still result in an incredibly successful business, but it's not that enshittification model that you and I have talked about in the past, where we see that constant drive for revenue making a worse experience for users.